the Bahamas tonight, the Trade Union Congress mounts a national strike, a move the Director of Labor is calling illegal.
Officials from the Public Hospitals Authority giving a comprehensive report on the impact of services as a result of that national strike today. The details straight ahead.
And senior labor officials filing a last-minute court order. The Bahamas Tonight live starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Everyday.
A massive strike taking place today, threatening operations at government agencies. Good evening, I'm Opal Road.
And I'm Candino Knowles. TUC President Obi Ferguson, who had been threatening industrial action for some time now, claims these workers have legitimate reasons to take a stand, as the union has been battling to resolve their outstanding disputes for the past 3 years.
Well, Charisma Robinson begins our team coverage tonight, and she tells us that the union boss says today's strike was legal.
Scores of customs and immigration officers and nurses withdrew labor from their respective jobs Wednesday morning in the first day of a national strike planned by the Trade Union Congress. On the first leg of his strategized strike action, TUC President Obi Ferguson met with disgruntled nurses. Nurses Union President Jan Kalfani says her laundry list of concerns mainly relates to shifts and payment issues.
You have to enter nursing with a bachelor's degree. I'm saying that the nurse is not, you're not going to have a promotional exercise in 7 years. And that nurse has been working for you for 20 odd years. Let's give some benefits to it. Do you find that unreasonable? Because I certainly don't.
Meantime, over at Customs headquarters on Thompson Boulevard, Executive Vice President of the Bahamas Customs Immigration and Allied Workers Union, Cordero Edgecombe, said the support was good enough to hamper operations at the various ports. About 50 officers could be seen holding placards along the street, protesting concerns over outstanding overtime pay and promotions.
Customs and Immigration has been trying to take a stand from 2012. Really, today is only a climactic point, one of the climactic points in this whole journey that we've had in the injustices that have been handed down to these officers. Operations today is greatly hampered by this. I would know that there are some issues in the Arawaki section here at headquarters. A number of stations have not been able to function.
But when ZNS News spoke with Comptroller of Customs Charles Turner as to the impact of the strike Wednesday, he had a different story, describing it as minimal. Turner acknowledged that there was a brief shortage of personnel at the Arawaki port, but other than that, he said all ports in Nassau and the Family Islands were operational and members of the public were not inconvenienced. He says those officers who did not show up to work were replaced with mid-managers. Now, the TUC president was also set to meet up with those customs and immigration officers. He addressed the legitimacy of the strike action as Director of Labor Robert Farquharson has said the move is illegal.
Don't give the Bahamian public the impression that responsible officers in this union, the nurses who are responsible to people in this community, will participate in an illegal strike. That's not so.
Now, not only is the strike illegal, the TUC president says in the coming days, its impact will be felt throughout key government agencies.
This is a process. We're not going to allow them to dictate us. They thought we were coming downtown. We ain't going downtown. We're going to be right here and we will do exactly what we have to do.
And that, he says, will continue until all outstanding issues expressed by the various unions are addressed once and for all. Charisma Robinson, ZNS Network News.
Well, today's strike even put a dent on national health care.
And Public Hospital Authority officials told us that at least half of the nurses and support staff at 2 healthcare facilities did not show up for work.
Specific areas hit include the Accident and Emergency Department and the Dialysis Unit. LaDawn Davis covered the PHA's press conference on the issue late this afternoon.
Chairman of the Public Hospitals Authority, Senator Frank Smith, outlined a comprehensive report on the essential services impacted at the Princess Margaret Hospital, Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, and the Rand Memorial Hospital in Grand Bahama during the national strike on Wednesday. Smith says despite this interruption in services, operations at all healthcare institutions continued as normal.
Of the 302 nurses who were scheduled for the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift today at the 3 institutions: the Princess Margaret Hospital, Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, and Grand Bahama Health Services. 144 showed up for work. 158 nurses did not show up for work. The Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, 26% of registered nurses and 47% of trained clinical nurses reported for the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift. 67% of registered nurses and trained clinical nurses reported for their shift 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Grand Bahama Health Services.
The PHA chairman says although this industrial matter is before the courts, he says PHA is putting a contingency plan in place to ensure that healthcare services across the country are not affected in the future.
Long term, we were of the view that we had dealt with any grievances or any objection or objectionable conditions that were brought to our attention as we meet on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, with the head of the nurses union. In terms of dealing with this in the short term, that we find ourselves in the situation that we find ourselves in, we have been forced to mitigate against the shortages by drawing in some resources.
Hospital Administrator Mary Walker also talks about the impact of services at the A&E and the dialysis unit at the Princess Margaret Hospital.
Dialysis unit in particular, patient services were not impacted. We were able to serve every one of the dialysis patients that would have been scheduled for the day. And the nursing staff that would have reported there was just about almost 100%. With regard to the accident emergency department, we were seeing a shortfall of an attendance, of about 64% of the staff that showed up. We were able to deal with the persons presenting, and in fact we would have managed that by putting a senior physician at the triage position. And so we were able to serve the public.
Meanwhile, PHA officials say they are still unclear as to the reasons behind this industrial action taken by the nurses as they conduct meetings with the body on a regular basis. LaDawn Davis, ZNS Network News.
Now, the Labor Minister and Director warning employees who participated in the strike that they could face termination.
Sept Adderley continues our team coverage with the senior government officials urging union officials to settle this issue.
If you walk off your job legally, employers cannot terminate you. They can cut your pay, but they cannot terminate you if you don't work. If you walk off your job illegally, well, you quit working, so employers could then terminate you.
And for Minister of Labor and National Insurance Shane Gibson, it's as simple as that. Officials are calling Wednesday's strike a fundamental breach of their employment contract, leaving them subject to termination. As a result, the government will be taking legal action against those employees. Labor Director Robert Farquharson explains.
It's a process, and once a process takes place, yes, you have the right to strike. Yes, a strike certificate has been issued, but that strike certificate has been issued, and afterwards issued, the matter is referred to the tribunal. And once the matter is referred to the tribunal, any strike or any incitement of a strike is a criminal offense.
Farquharson confirmed operations at the various agencies were normal in spite of that industrial action. Still, Minister Gibson called the incident disgraceful and urged union leaders to come to the table before the situation gets worse.
We had nurses who in the middle of treating patients at 5 o'clock this morning walked off the job. I'm not talking about the nurses who didn't show up at their scheduled time. I'm talking about nurses who was on the job this morning and at 5 o'clock in the middle of treating patients walked off. That is absolutely disgraceful. And so I want to encourage all workers who are out there illegally to please return to work. Don't wait until after the fact. Don't say you're not warned, because we are telling you now you're off the job illegally.
As a former trade unionist, I support any trade union taking strike action as long as it is a legal action. But when you border on inciting a strike, when you border on encouraging people to go and strike, knowing that it's an illegal strike, that's a very serious matter.
Both Gibson and Farquharson are hoping to reach an amicable solution. Meantime, they're encouraging employees to read their Industrial Relations Act and know what their rights are as to avoid any confusion in the future. Sept Adderley, ZNS Network News.
All new developments at 7 as Supreme Court Justice Ian Winder issuing an injunction late this afternoon ordering members of those striking unions to report to work immediately and not take part in any form of industrial action until this matter is heard before the courts. Director of Labor Robert Farquharson telling ZNS News that the order was served on Trade Union Congress President Obie Ferguson around 4:50 this afternoon on behalf of the unions. He said at a press conference that if these unions don't comply, they will be in breach of the order and in contempt of court. He noted that those persons who did not report to work will also face disciplinary action.
What this order in fact does, it puts in place an injunction that restrains any member of the Bahamas Nurses Union, the Bahamas Customs Immigration Allied Workers Union, and the Bahamas Education Managers Union from participating in any strike action. The government is of the belief that their actions were illegal. It is in violation of the provisions of the Industrial Relations Act, and it has put the services of the Department of Immigration, the Customs Department, the Ministry of Education, the Public Hospitals Authority, and the Ministry of Health from providing the vital and essential services that is required.
And coming up, debate on the gaming bill began in Parliament today.
And the Bahamas gets one step closer to legislating stem cell regulations. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight live on the ZNS Network.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.